Today we've got JT Olson and Jared Delong on Signature Required. Welcome, guys.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
JT, you are the founder of Both Hands, and Jared, you're the executive director of the organization. Most people, I would imagine, haven't heard of what Both Hands is. And if I asked people to guess what Both Hands was, I'm not sure that they would get any closer. So maybe, JT, do you want to start us off? And
It's the most irresistible nonprofit in America.
Okay. All right.
That is glowing recommendation. Yeah.
So tell us what you do with Both Hands.
Well, what we do at Both Hands, we help families raise money for adoptions. And we do it by working on a widow's house. How's that? Does that pique your interest a little bit? Think like, well, how does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me more would be my first question.
Well, usually when I say that to people, it's funny because they always look at me really politely, but you can see there's this glaze in their eye that they're saying, "Oh, that's nice," but they're thinking, "How does that work?"
Sure.
And I found the best way to really explain it is to tell you how it happened. I mean, I was on the board of Bethany Christian Services, a local board here in Nashville, about the turn of the century. And one year I was in charge of the fundraiser. And I chose to do a golf fundraiser, where you send letters out to people and say, "Would you sponsor me while I golf?"
Classic.
Okay. I send my letters out. I had a buddy of mine who I was in a Bible study with. He sends my letter back to me. Does not include a check. He just took a magic marker and he scribbled on my letter, said, "JT, if you told me you were working on a widow's house, I might sponsor you. But you're just golfing. Nice cause, but not my money."
That's bold.
It was great. I mean, it hurt my feelings a little bit, but really the main thing I was thinking was, what a good idea. And I called him a couple days later and we talked about it and laughed, and he still didn't give me any money. But but the idea the idea never left me. Whenever I saw a 5K or a golf tournament after, I kept going through my head, if all those people were working on a widow's house, would it be better? Would it be better? I just didn't have the orphan part figured out, and that was going to come later.
So help me understand. So instead of throwing a party around golf, you throw a community event around helping a widow as your fundraiser?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that-
about right. Yeah. I mean, the way to explain a little further, the way it happened a couple years later, I'm in church, and I run into a friend of mine. I hadn't seen him in a couple months. I said, "Hey, what's up, Don?" And he looks at me and says, "We're adopting 4 kids from Moldova."
Oh,
Now,
wow.
he's already got 3 kids at home. And I said, "What happened?" And he said, "Well, I went on a mission with Sweet Sleep, delivering beds to orphanages in Moldova, fell in love with this little boy, George, got home, started the adoption process, and in the process, we find out George has 3 siblings."
Wow.
I said, "We're not going to break up the siblings."
How do you separate the family? Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you want to hear the backstory on that, the backstory, that took me back to when I was 12, living on a farm in northeastern Iowa. There was 5 of us kids, and one weekend my mom and dad left to celebrate their 16th wedding anniversary, and us kids were kind of farmed out to different places. And I remember Saturday night being brought home by one of the neighbors. He was dropping me and one of my brothers off, and I was dirty. I'd played in the barn all day, so I had to go in the basement to change. My brother went in the front door, but I remember sitting on this chair in our basement, bending over and lacing my boots, and my brother came down the basement stairs. I looked up at him and I said, "Are Mom and Dad home?" And he looked at me and he said, "Mom and Dad are dead."
Oh.
And I said, "What?" He said, "Mom and Dad are dead. They were killed in a car accident an hour ago." And he turned around and walked upstairs. He had just heard himself. And he was coming down to tell me. He was in shock. But I remember hitting that cold cement floor and crying like any 12-year-old would cry. I know what it's like to be an orphan. And I know what it's like to hear those words. I know what it's like to wonder what's going to happen now, who's going to take care of us. But I also know what it's like to be rescued, because 3 months before the accident, my mom and dad and my aunt and uncle changed their wills.
Wow.
That if anything would happen to one of them, the other family would take them.
Wow.
My aunt and uncle were 33 years old. They lived in a really nice suburb of Milwaukee, very different than a farm in rural Iowa. They had 3 kids of their own. They had a 2-year-old, a 3rd grader, and a 5th grader. They took all 5 of us.
Wow.
They took a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 15-year-old.
Wow.
I know what it's like to have someone come up and say, "We got you. We got you." So back to the hallway in church when Don says he's not going to break up the siblings.
Yeah. You
I'm
said
the
you're
just-
right.
I'm the just right guy to say that to, because I am the recipient of someone having the courage and guts to step up and say, "We're going to take them." And I looked at Don. By then we had adopted, our 5th child's adopted, and I knew it was going to be expensive. And I said, "Don, how much is this going to cost?" And he said, "They're telling us 70 or 80,000." I said, "Any idea how you're going to do it?" He said, "No." And I said, "I think I got an idea." So Don and I, we recruited. This is how it works. We recruited about 14, 15 friends. We all sent letters out to everyone we knew saying, "Would you sponsor me for the day while I fix up Miss Lucille's house?" Let me tell you about Miss Lucille. All the money I raised from your sponsorship is going to help us bring these 4 kids from Moldova home. Let me tell you about these 4 kids. And we found a widow in Franklin who we got all the supplies donated, because everyone we talked to loved the idea. I mean, it's like, dude, yeah, what do you need?
Yeah.
You know? And we spent the day working in the house. I think about 30, 35 people showed up. It was a beautiful March day. It was just awesome. I'll never forget it. And when it was over, we had raised a little over 70,000.
Wow. In one day.
Well, it,
one day's work.
one day's
lots
work.
of-
It trickled in. There was
Sure.
a lot of letters went out. It took time for the money to come in.
Well, wait,
But
so did your buddy send you back the letter this time with both "Yes, I will help" or
he has sponsored every year since then.
Oh,
That's good.
praise God, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's how it started.
So when did you found it?
Well, we founded it in August of 2008. That project was March of 2007.
Okay, so that was like the test pilot.
That was like a test pilot. I didn't
that
know what I was
went.
doing, but I mean, I just knew this idea was in my head, and I'd talk to my friends, my neighbors, and just I'd bounce the ideas off different business people, just because it was just on my. It was just, it was there. It was just, it wouldn't give up.
Yeah. So,
You know?
Jared, when do you enter the picture? So 2008, it's founded.
Right. Well, so JT, you had some questions for Sarah, or Sarah had some questions for you.
Yeah, at the end of that, well, there was a second project, because about 6 months later, after that first project, another buddy of mine came up and said, "Hey, I heard what you did with Don. Would you help me?" And I said, "Well, yeah, let's do it again. It was fun." So we worked on. We found a widow in Franklin, Miss Diane. She lost her husband in a very tragic car accident 7 months earlier. She had a 4th grader and an 8th grader. I mean, in all these products, there's joy, but there's sorrow. You know what I mean? And there's that's what's the joy. This is comforting some of these widows. But she needed a new roof. She needed, I mean, it was some work. But we got a new roof donated. That's a great story. And we got, I remember standing on the roof and looking down, counting the people. And I think I counted 52 people.
Wow.
And we had transformed the front of our yard. We had transformed the back of our yard. And we were putting a new roof on. And it was an amazing day. And then I counted the cars, and I counted 19 cars on the street, and I thought, yeah, this is a way to serve. This is a way to show the neighborhood, here's how you serve a widow. And it took me back to the farm, because about a month after the accident, I remember getting off the bus. It was a beautiful April day, and our bus stops about a half mile from the house. It's on a hill, so you can see a lot of our farmland. But there in our fields were all our neighbors, with their tractors and their plows and their planters. I mean, it was Bob Grana and Leland Meyer, Bert Juvick, Everett Ellison, Ed Cooper, Doc Weimiller, Jack Melcher. When you're 12 years old, you know whose tractor's who.
Absolutely.
You know, and these are my dad's buddies, making sure their buddies' kids were taken care of. So I know what it's like to have your feet washed. And when I stood on that roof, I thought, this is living. This is so much fun. It was nothing but joy. And then seeing the joy on the 52 people that were there. They weren't there they were loving it.
Yeah.
And that night, I went out to eat with my wife. And my wife said, "I think I'm supposed to do this." And she's a stay-at-home homeschooling mom with 5 kids at this point. She had questions. Like
Good wives do.
Yeah, have you thought about health insurance? Have you thought about a paycheck? And we got 5 kids. This is Brentwood. And I said, yeah, what would you think about going to work outside the home? And about 5 or 6 weeks later, she was at Belmont. She got an entry-level position in admissions. and she's just really done some unbelievable things with her career in the last 17 years. But that's where we meet Jared.
Yeah.
See,
So
good
what year
wives
is
bring
that?
good people.
Yeah.
That's what we're hearing.
Yeah. So I went to Belmont, and I started out music business, like a lot of the students there, and then I actually switched to entrepreneurship. Their entrepreneurship schools, incredible. But I heard JT's story and resonated with me in many aspects, but one being, he grew up on a farm. I grew up on a dairy farm, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Amish country. And so I actually, with our student group that Sarah advised, that I was a part of, we just kind of felt we needed to do something. So our team actually kind of took the both hands model, and we had a bunch of students send out letters and raise funds for an orphanage in Haiti, I believe. And we served at a retirement community right next to Belmont, because there's several widows living in the facility. So we fixed up the facility, and we raised, it was at least 12,000 or more.
Yeah.
But I was hooked from that point on, so it came time to graduate, and I
When did you graduate? What year?
in 2013,
Okay.
and someone told me that if you want to get into the music business, you have to want to do nothing but that. Like you need to live and breathe that, and be willing to have make some sacrifices, and it could be a long journey. And I just felt like God wasn't necessarily calling me towards that, but definitely was. I wanted to do something that was going to have a kingdom impact, and so that's actually why I switched to entrepreneurship. And then when it came time to graduate, I asked Sarah if she knew of anywhere that was hiring, and had a great talk with JT and joined the team. So then I was at Both Hands for about 4 years, left to work at a nonprofit software company for about 4 years, and then came back. So that's kind of my journey, how I'm here today. But
And he started out as my assistant. So he really got to learn how I think and what I do and everything else, my emails, and so he's learned the business from the ground floor up in a lot of ways, and just has been an excellent executive director.
So you majored in entrepreneurship when you graduated Belmont. It's an interesting pivot in some ways to go into a nonprofit world, and one that was probably pretty small at that point in time. Like, was Jared your first hire?
No, third hire.
that was the third
Hire.
Third hire, yeah.
Okay, still qualifies as small.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. This particular yes, we were very small.
Yeah. What did you see in Both Hands that made you say, all right, this is the highest and best use of my college degree, this is where I want to go?
Well, I think just that entrepreneurial spirit, because my dad, him and his two brothers ran the farm, and so growing up, I worked on the farm. It's kind of the stereotypical, getting up before school certain days, working on weekends, raking the fields, milking the cows, the whole bit. And so I just have always loved the idea of kind of starting something of my own, and then I think I love, there's so many people I will talk to out there that they want to start their own ministry, and I think that's great. But I also think I always encourage them to look at other ministries that are already doing great work, or they're already doing what you're considering doing. Rather than having 2 or 3 ministries that are all doing the same thing, can you partner together? And so that just, I mean, his story, was so powerful. But I remember on the first day of, and I may have told you this, I'm not sure if you, but the very first day, so I had a younger brother who's 2 years younger. He had special needs, very, very severe, 100% dependent on, we had home nursing care for him and my parents. He couldn't walk, couldn't talk, and just very, very, very severe special needs. But the first day, I watched one of our families, a Both Hands family, who had just done a project. And every project, we tell the family, hey, make a video of your project day so you can share that on social media, send it out in emails so everyone can see the work that was done. And that's a great fundraising tool afterwards to use as well. And so so I watched the video, and it's a family who chose to adopt a little boy with special needs. And so I just felt like that was just in a little way, you know, God telling to me, hey, Jared, you're in the right place, you know, at the right time. So.
I have to imagine. So you're pulling every heartstring I have. We have 4 kids, and we just had to update all of our estate, our will and planning, and all I can think about is what if somebody wanted to pull them apart? How devastating it would be to them, how devastating it would be to us. They're a unit. We call them Team Patton. They're their own group. So do you often see, you have to have seen so many cool stories from the one you just told to your origin story. Are you finding a lot of people adopting whole families, or is it really a range? What are you seeing?
Well, how much time you got?
Let's hear it.
I feel like on every project, not kidding, every project there's some crazy story that happens. It's always different. Like one that comes to mind, and this is random. It has to do with a dumpster, but you remember this one? Yeah.
As most good stories do.
There's a couple dumpster stories, okay? So I don't know which one you're telling.
Dumpsters or
there's a
dumpster
couple.
fires?
Well, so there was a family, and they were doing a project, and we always, like JT said, we always try to encourage them to get the supplies donated because they want to focus on fundraising, and that defeats the purpose if you're having to go out and buy all your supplies. And so they did a great job of that, but they still needed a dumpster because there's a lot of demo work that needed done. And so they were asking their team, kind of last minute, hey, we still haven't found a dumpster. Or it might have been they secured one and it fell through. But either way, their team, someone in the back raised their hand and they said, we were in a Jeep competition this past weekend, and the prize was a free dumpster rental.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just...
First of all, who enters a contest where the prize is a dumpster?
Right.
I really need to understand.
It's a Jeep go through the. I don't know
Like
either,
race-
but
It's a Jeep thing.
but that even makes it more remarkable.
It's so funny.
It's like these guys need a dumpster, and I mean the way I look at this is God is, oh, you need a dumpster? Yeah, watch this. You know?
He does work in ironies, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That's so
I just
funny.
that was a cool story, and another I feel like we got a front row 50-yard line seat to miracles and to great stories and to God moving in people's lives. But this lady from a family from California, they were adopting from Ethiopia. I can't remember what year it was, early on, 11 or 12. And the widow they served just loved them. She became a grandmother. I mean, and the mom told me we've adopted her as a grandmother. She's over here on Sundays, you know, and she loves the child they brought back from Ethiopia. About 3 years later, they were going to go to Ethiopia again and do a project. This time, they did another Both Hands project, and the new grandmother worked on that house of the new widow. But when they went to Ethiopia to get their child, the widow from the first project flew with them. Now that's adopting a grandmother. And it's just, you know, stories like that. Just think about how this widow feels. Like, just fulfillment.
She has a family.
Yeah. It's fun work.
I don't even know. It's hard to ask a next question because you're like, please just keep telling me your story. I don't know how to even ask a follow-up because it sounds magic. It almost sounds too good to be true, but that is our Lord.
Yeah, JT, as an entrepreneur and a business guy, I have one business model question, if you'll indulge me, to just help me understand it from a business perspective, because there's an element to it where you're truly caring for the widows and orphans. I mean, unbelievably biblical, foundational to understanding a kingdom purpose to our lives. And that's incredible. From a business perspective, when I think about saying my strategy is to raise money in order to be able to cover the cost of adoption, which we've got to talk about the $70,000 or $80,000 number in a moment. So please, put a pin in that. Carly, you take that one next, because I have to understand why it's that expensive. So just set that aside for a moment. The question is, if my goal is to raise that money for adoption, it seems like you've created a second fundraising necessity in doing kind of a Habitat for Humanity type experience of having to get, supplies donated, and you get volunteers. Some people that may have a heart for giving for an adoption but may not show up for a service project. So it seems like out of one necessity for fundraising, you actually create two. And I wonder what the mindset is to say, hey, if I wanted to raise money just for the adoption, is the case in and of itself not compelling enough to say, let's just raise for the adoption? What did you feel like was the value add, to use a business perspective? So indulge me with that. The value add of adding a service project to what is already a pretty heartwarming narrative of adoption.
That's a good question.
No, I understand the value add. I was in business for 35 years,
Yeah.
so I get it. But there are organizations, there's tools that people can raise money, like on a GoFundMe type platform funding thing, and some of them are like Life Song for Orphans is great because they don't need to take any money out, for their expenses. So it's a great. But what I found with this is people have a tendency to give more money. If you've got a, let's call it a GoFundMe, okay, for an adoption, and you're sending letters to your friends, Facebook stuff, and everything else, you say, well, with 3 clicks, a friend will click, and donate $50. If you tell that same friend, I'm serving a widow, this widow, here's what we're going to do. That same person is going to give $250. And I know this because we call people and we thank them for their donation. We're probably one of the best thankers in the nonprofit world, and that's what we set out to be. We want to be the best at thanking people. So I have talked to thousands of people on the phone who gave. And one thing they always say is, what I loved about it is they were doing something. They were doing something.
Fascinating.
It is. And I think that's what people, what they want to give. They say, I want to give you for something,
Well, I think that makes sense because there is so much demand. Everybody wants your money. And there's always somebody running a campaign on social media where they just want you to click through and send. But when you see a video of what they're doing, it does create an experience even if you can't participate. You get to be part of the story.
Right, because project might be happening in Omaha, and you get a letter from a friend you know in Omaha, and you live in Michigan, but you see this, and you go, what are you doing? And then you see the video later, and it's got the before and after pictures. It's got maybe 20 seconds of an interview with the widow, and she says something like, I just feel like God hasn't forgotten me. I thought he'd forgotten, but he hasn't. And you hear a widow say that, you just, I'll give $250 to that. That's the power of it. It's just.
John Maxwell has one of my favorite sayings in this, because when you study in the Bible, there's so many things that Jesus teaches that are upside down, right? That just, you're like, how could it work that way? You have to give in order to receive. You have to do this to seem that, and it's exactly opposite of what we would expect to see. So the concept of taking one project and turning it into 2 projects really feels upside down. Like, this is not the way the business plan should roll.
Yeah.
But what John Maxwell says is that you have to win a heart before you ask for a hand. And I think what's really compelling about your model is that you are serving and winning the heart, not necessarily of the donor, although you are in a way by showing that you're serving a widow, but you're serving before you ask for anything. And I think that's really interesting because most people just ask in order to be able to serve. But you've found a way to serve and then ask. And I think that's just really fascinating. I would never have drawn that plan up.
It's very loaves and fishes.
Yeah.
I love that. The little boy offering up his lunch before anybody else got to eat.
Yeah.
So that's how that feels.
I mean, I feel like we'll say often that this is really God's model, and we're just the stewards of it, right? All throughout Scripture, widows and orphans are mentioned together, right? And so it's kind of like when after that first project with the Myers, and they raised over 70,000 and knocked the socks off JT. You know, I mean, it's like God was saying, this is widows and orphans. What do you expect? Right? And so we're not all called to adopt, but we're all called to care for widows and orphans. And so I think that's what we get to do through every project. And so I think that's how God's blessing it. I think all these stories that we're seeing is just affirmation to our team constantly that, yes, this is what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it's blowing up the business model. Look at
I know.
Spencer's like
It's
having
amazing.
epiphanies over there. I'm watching his face, and he's like, you're like glowing as that comes into light.
I want to go out and make things like 10 times more complicated for my employees and say, trust me, this is just how it's designed.
They're gonna stop the tape.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, no more. Spencer's not allowed to podcast anymore.
Well, and here's the cool part is we started the best part of this is the stats, because now we started in August of 2008. Okay, and the recession was in September of 2008. So it's a great time starting a nonprofit. We were about a month in. It's we're what smart people we are.
Love this for us. Yeah.
More of the Lord's irony right there.
It's right there. And but now we've done 1,352 projects in 45 states.
But who's counting? It's amazing.
1,541 widows have been served.
Wow.
And 1,571 kids are no longer orphans. And we've raised $19.5 million. Wow. And here's a kicker: 100% of that goes to the cause. We don't take anything out for operations. I'm just going to throw you another little, so you.
Wow.
And it's amazing. When a family does a project or a group does a project, because we work with different groups, but 100% of what they raise goes to the cause. I just decided this when I started. I said, I really did. I wanted to make this the most irresistible nonprofit in America. And I wasn't joking when I said that. I mean, I said, this is going to be so good. It's going to be widows and orphans, and we're not going to take any money out. But that does put the onus. We have to raise our money.
Okay,
So you look at it like almost a mission field. Like you're a missionary in this space, and you raise your own.
So since then we've raised our funds every year. Instead of doing a big concert or a banquet, we do our own Both Hands project. A month ago we had, and it's gotten a little bit big, probably a little out of hand now, but we had 300 people show up at the parking lot at Christ Community on a Saturday about a month ago, and we had served 20 widows in Franklin, and we raised about $350,000.
Can we get an invitation to the next one of those,
it's
please?
fun. It's everyone is smiling. It's amazing. And we also have monthly donors. A lot of them just love what we do. And friends, they just say, I love what you're doing. Just keep doing it. We'll support you. We'll make sure the things are paid. A lot of them are families who did a project 5-10 years ago, and now they're in a different financial situation, so they want to pay it forward. And then we have a lot of generous friends at Christmas time. But that's how we do it. And we've never missed a payroll yet. God's blessed it, and it feels like the safest place is out on a limb.
Yeah. I love that. We need to stitch that on a pillow. There was a season where we were really researching adoption too. I won't go into it today, but I was told I might not be able to have kids. And so very early in our marriage, we were researching what would this look like to start our family through adoption. Are we really praying? Are we called to that?
Yeah.
And then the Lord blessed us with four. I almost forgot the little one. 4 biological children of our own. But man, adoption has always been on our heart, and people we love so much have adopted, and it's so precious. But I remember looking at the financial impact that would make on our family and how it's travel expenses, it's so much red tape. So can you speak a little bit to that as you've started, to how much it's grown? I mean, what is the average financial cost for a family that wants to take this leap?
Yeah, we've seen anywhere from 35 to 50, 60,000. We've even seen more north of that. Honestly, if we're seeing adoptions that a family is saying is going to cost them 70 or 80,000, we typically suggest that they do some further research and maybe look elsewhere. But there's a lot of different factors that go into it. If it's a domestic adoption, obviously you're paying for the agency. There's the initial home study work just to be legally approved to adopt a child. Then there's the birth mother fees throughout the process. there's administrative fees for the adoption agency and all the work they do. Sometimes there may be some additional marketing that they have towards finding a birth mother. And then there's the legal paperwork once they're matched with their child. And but travel fees are kind of just dependent on if it's international. Obviously, travel fees are going to be a lot more. And also, if it's international, then you're dealing with the additional legal process, to have the child become a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
So it can vary by agency. It can vary by which state you're adopting from, or if it's international. But we typically, the agencies that we'll recommend, is between 35 to 50,000.
And you have vendors, I hate to use the word vendors, but agencies that you probably see all the time that you have a good relationship
Yes,
with and
do.
recommend. Are you seeing a lot of fraud in the market? Because you said if somebody's asking for 70, look again. What is that common?
Yeah, we have some really great partners that also kind of work in the adoption funding space. And so we'll check in with them periodically just to kind of see what are they seeing or hearing. Are there agencies that they're noticing, or just, some things may be a little bit odd. But we do have, the agencies must be licensed. If they need to be Hague accredited if they're doing international adoptions. And there's a few that we have chosen not to work with, or we've asked our families to, look elsewhere. But I know that there's some bills currently going through legislation. We're hoping that they get passed around tightening up some of the guidelines and putting more regulations in place to put agencies in check, to definitely combat that fraud. And there's in Tennessee as well. I know that there's been a lot of great work that an organization called the Adoption Project, Jeremy Harrell is the founder of that nonprofit, but they've been doing some great work to really put more legislation in place to combat that.
So my business ear picks up again here and just says, when you think about a $35,000 to $80,000 price tag, what is the largest price tag of that run? So is there something
the
that's
largest
like,
item?
yeah, is there something that's like 70% of the cost or 50% of the cost?
Well, I know for the Moldova one, the very first one, that was 2007. A lot of that was flights. Remember, you're going to go over there with 2. You're coming back with 6.
Right.
In Moldova, there's 4 legs to get to. I mean, there's a lot of flights to get there. So that was a big chunk. That was a chunk of that. I don't know how much, but I'm guessing that was a lot of it. I don't know the rest of it. But that's part of it is travel.
Yeah. I think just your agency and your caseworkers, the amount of time they're going to be investing in you, going through that home study process, and representing you, and that communication with the birth mother, just all of that overhead that the agency is going to be taking on, that is a substantial piece of it. And then the birth mother, her expenses that are being covered, that can be a good chunk as well.
Because a traditional adoption would cover all of her medical bills and things of that nature, right?
Yeah, it can vary by state and by agency. Some agencies offer more than others for the birth mother, but yeah, pretty much.
We work with a lot of heroes.
You do.
I mean, we go to these conferences. Some of the people we work with in the foster care stories we hear of, a couple that they've got a 33-year-old, a 20-year-old, or 25-year-old, and a 29-year-old, and they decide, no, we want to make an impact. They're not seeking ease, they're seeking impact. And they take on a 12-year-old, 14, and a 15-year-old sibling group and say, we're going to raise these kids. I mean, that's the kind of people that we get to work with in this world. And they're just people who they want to make a difference. And it's just fun.
So how could people like us, we're hearing about you for the first time. Clearly this story is amazing. What are your pain points? Like, where do you wish you had partners, or are there opportunities that you wish people would walk alongside you? Maybe we don't know somebody who is doing a project, but we love you guys. Obviously you have your overhead projects, but what are your pain points?
I would say, I think on the adoption side, first off, is the number one reason why families don't adopt is when they find out the cost.
Really?
That's the number one barrier. And so I think awareness for us and for other organizations. I mean, there's none like Both Hands, but there's other adoption grant organizations out there, loans, things like that. I think more awareness for families to know that there are organizations out there that can help them cover the costs. There's also the adoption tax credit. Oftentimes employers may offer some type of adoption matching grant of some kind for their employees. Really just the eyes glaze over as soon as they see the price tag. And we never want money to be a reason that a child doesn't have a home. So that would be one, is just awareness.
That we exist, that there's a
Yeah.
possibility. Our average family raises $22,000. I mean, that's a lot of spaghetti.
That's a lot of
dinners.
money.
That's a
Yeah.
lot of spaghetti dinners.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take 22,000 plus the adoption tax credit, which is 16,000. Maybe it's going to be 17
Yeah.
soon. You add that up, maybe get another grant from somewhere. I mean, you've covered your adoption right there.
Wow.
I mean, it's doable.
How many projects in a given year do you average?
We were doing in 2018, we did 100 and about
32.
2018 to 2019, we did about 120 on average. And then when COVID hit, numbers dropped in half. So we were doing about, our lowest point was 56 one year. And then last year we did 112. So our goal was to get up over 130 this year.
So about 10 a month if you round that out.
Yeah.
When you think about your capacity, so when you talk about awareness, let's say that somebody listening to this really connects with their heart, and they say, I really want to help spread your name across Tennessee region. Are you mostly focused in Tennessee?
45 states.
Okay,
We're
all right, so
over.
not at all. So from a broader marketing perspective, if this comes on somebody's heart and they want to help Both Hands brand grow, what type of capacity do you have? How scalable is this? Could you handle 20 a month? Say, if we had it, we could do it right now.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so JT and the team, they've developed a great toolkit that walks every family through doing a project, where now when a family's approved, they have access to on our website. It's just a big old checklist, series of videos, and then our team walks them through. So we're very high touch every step, because our goal is ultimately that they would follow every step and raise the most that they can.
Yeah.
Our goal is always, we tell a family, send out 600 letters. 100 you should send out, and then 500 should be sent out by other people on your team. So that's...
Yeah, and I coach all the families. I personally coached every project that's happened. My background is in sales and sales management, and really, it blows me away, because the accident happened when I was 12. I started Both Hands when I was 52. There's 40 years in there. It's like, I feel like God was saying, everything up to now has been practice. This is getting you ready, because now this is what this has all been about. The skills, the people you've met, the sermons you've heard, the books you've read. I mean, put it all together, just tee it up and have fun, because this is going to be a blast.
Yeah, I mean, Moses was prepared for 40 years before he got to go in, so that makes sense to me.
Well, but part of that training, it's just amazing how it was just so easy when we started. I trained the families. Here's how you recruit a team. I did that for 20 years. Here's how you recruit a team. We had the whole manual. It's 81-step toolkit he's talking about. Then we coach them on, here's how you have a meeting to bring everyone into your home for an hour-long meeting. Tell them about Both Hands. Get them fired up. Get them fired up about sending 600 letters, and get them fired up about asking people for money. And we answer all those objections. I teach them how to do that, And then I talk to them right before their project, too, the week before the project, make sure they're set to go. So, I mean, it's a high touch. And we're doing last year, almost a year and a half now, we've been doing Zoom calls. I used to do each one of them on the phone individually. But now, I'll do 3 families at once on a Zoom. So, can we scale? Yeah, we can do that.
So you need to video some of that. We gotta get you some evergreen content for that. Yeah.
Well, we do have me down videoing all parts of the training in case I get hit by a bus. We ought to make sure we got that.
Yeah.
So,
And his dream has been, when I first started, he had said, imagine if we had one project happening in every state every weekend out of the year, which that would be
That's cool.
2,500.
2,500 projects. So, in terms of capacity, we'd probably need a little extra help.
We'd have to buy a new computer, I think.
Wait, but what's the capacity, or I guess even the need? So you have your organizational capacity, but how many, I mean, could you wrap a number around how many kids are looking for homes that you have this heart to serve? Even just domestically.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't. I think with the Department of the State for International Adoptions, we actually have data on how many adoptions are happening that they report on. One thing is domestically, and there's legislation currently. National Council for Adoption is really pushing this in Congress right now. Is around more just collective data on adoptions happening domestically each year, because the different states report it in different ways, so there's no consistency. So it's a hard question to answer. I definitely know there's more families we could be helping.
Sure.
What realistically percentage of market share per se would that be?
Yeah.
That's hard.
It's hard to know. Yeah.
Well, there's so much in the world, and we're not touching on it today, about women and pregnancy and what to do. But for the adoptive-minded mother, I wonder if there's barriers to entry for her, or how she feels about trying to find families in connection with you guys, or how many women would be encouraged if they knew that there are so many families that want to be part of that.
Well, things like this help get the word out,
Yeah.
I just think we just gotta, when people do a search of how am I going to afford an adoption, but I think a lot of times they just hear about it and they don't even think there's a possibility. Just the more exposure we get, the more, and plus it's a fun thing. A widow gets served, and here the cool thing is when these people do projects, and the average is 22,000. Well, that means some people do more and some people do less, and if they do less, it's usually a couple things that may be in a lower socioeconomic area than maybe the average is. That's possible. They're just their circle of friends and things like that. But a lot of times it's because they didn't really do what I suggested they do, and send out 600 letters or get 15, 20 people on the team and stuff like that. But whenever I talk to them after the project, if I see they didn't raise much, like maybe 4,000 or 5,000, which is that's not a lot in what we're doing. They get on the phone. I said, well, how you doing? They say, oh, JT, it was obvious from the beginning. This is not about us. Let me tell you about this widow. And let me tell you what we did. And even if they don't raise a lot, I mean, there's no losers. They still experience joy. And that's why it's everybody wins. Everybody wins. Even when they don't raise as much. So it's kind of neat.
I have two questions for you, JT, and you can take these in either order that you want. One's a potentially dumb question, but this is the time to ask them, so help me. The first question is related to foster care and trying to understand where foster care plays in the role of adoption, and knowing some families that are foster families. Help me understand in the, I hate to call it machinery of the process,
Right.
but
Yeah.
help me understand that and educate me a little bit there. And then two, specifically to you, JT, one of almost every person's greatest fear is asking for money. People hate to ask for money. And you mentioned a second ago that one of the teachings that you do is teaching people a little bit of how to ask for money. So I know you've got a lot of curriculum, but if you would give us 60 seconds just for someone that's hearing this and is like, I'm not asking for money, that's going to make me feel terrible. Speak for just a moment educationally about that. So those are the two things in either order that you want.
I would say the first thing I think people need to understand is, and I try to teach them this, is when you send them a letter and say, I'm working on this widow's house, would you sponsor me for the day? Here's what we're doing, and here's what the money's going to go for, and it has little boxes they can check, and or else it has a box there, I think what you're doing is you're giving people a chance to do what God commands us to do. It's not just a suggestion. He's not saying like, hey, if you got some time, I got this group of people, they're widows and orphans. Would you just take care of them for me? It's a little bit more of a mandate than that if you really think about it and really read it. And so what you're doing is you're giving people an opportunity right out there in the open, very easy, to do what they've been commanded to do. Because, I mean, how many times people think about it? I mean, we hear a lot of people, sometimes they donate to us, and I say, how'd you hear about us? I did a web search on widows and orphans, and you guys popped up, and I read about your organization. I thought, oh, my gosh. And that's how they donate.
Okay.
They keep up to organizations. So that's one of the things I try to tell people. You're giving people an opportunity. And sometimes I tell people when they send a letter out, there's only two things that are going to happen with that letter. Number one, your friend is going to open it, read it, and say, wow, what a great idea. They're going to be glad you sent it to them. They're probably going to need an email reminder to send the check in, but they're actually glad you reminded them because they think it's a pretty cool gig. The other thing that's going to happen is they're going to read the letter, throw it away. And then you know what they're going to do? Get back to what they were doing. They're not going to sit and think about you. The reason people have this fear, I think, is because they magnify what people think about. They think people think about them more than people do.
Yeah.
People got more in their mind than think. I'm sorry. People don't think about you that much.
It's a great message. Yeah.
And I just try to help them understand it's not that big a deal. And even if someone is thinking about you after they throw that letter away, you just told them you're working on a widow's house to help an orphan. They're probably not thinking bad things about you.
See, that's why you got 30 years of sales training. That was
excellent.
phenomenal, JT.
I don't think we need to go to business school. I think that is like sales mastery.
I mean, it's just I just think you're giving them. That's how I've always felt about it, and just.
I love that.
That's great. So now, my dumb question on foster care. Help me understand how that functions in this framework.
Sure. Well, so there's when you're adopting a child through the foster care system, most of the costs are covered by the state. So for us, we haven't had any families approach us needing to do a project. So we typically are working with just families doing domestic private adoptions or international adoptions. However, one thing we have started to do is we're calling them just group projects. But essentially the idea is our model, but it's not for an adoptive family. It could be a company does a project with us, a small group from a church does a project with us, a group of college students, for a sorority, fraternity. The idea is they serve a widow, they send out letters, they fundraise. All the funds that come in goes towards, it could be another ministry that's serving like a foster care ministry, and any ministry that's serving orphaned and vulnerable children is the goal. Like one example, last year we had a group of fathers and sons from Grace Christian Academy, and they approached us to do a project. And Scott is the dad that led the project. They found a widow in Spring Hill to serve. They all sent out letters, and they raised about $8,000. They raised about $8,000 for the foster care closet at Church of the City. So that's one thing we're really trying to push, because that's a way that anyone can get involved, not just if you're adopting. So that to answer your question, that's one way that we're trying to kind of add a new product line, you could say.
I mean, what a great idea. Think about all the little towns in America that have a private little school. 500 kids go to this liberal arts school in a town of 10,000. I mean, there's got to be 2 or 3 widows in that town that could use some help. And I know there's a fraternity or sorority in that college. They could do a project and raise money for, anything. And the potential is just amazing to me. And a widow's going to get served. And no one's going to lose. So
your spirit around this, both of you, is so contagious, and I see why you work well together. Like this yin and yang of like, you've got the data and very even keel with this like passionate. I dig it. I get it. I dig it. As I leave here today, though, and I'm thinking about you guys, and I'm sure there will be 75 questions I wish I had asked that will also come up to my brain. But the one thing I want to ask is, how can we pray for you guys specifically as we go from here? Because there's a lot of things we could do, but I think our hearts are aligned that we know that that's the most powerful thing that anybody could do for you. So if somebody listening to this, us individually, wanted to pray for you. How could we do that?
You want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
You can both answer.
Yeah,
It's not either
I'm an
or.
unmasked
Only
person.
one
Go ahead.
answer. Yeah.
We are limiting prayers, so
I'm
if one
bunching.
of you
I'm
can
ready.
just
Sure,
one
sure.
prayer request, that'd be great.
I mean, gosh, I think the one thing that comes to mind immediately is all of our waiting families right now who have already done their project, and now they're waiting, especially internationally, countries like Ukraine, China. They're waiting to bring their child home, especially if they've already been matched and they have a photo, they have a picture, they have a name of who their child is.
And they're
just
watching
just
that
imagine that.
They're watching that child grow up.
So I just praying for strength for them. Pray for our government leaders. Pray for the leaders in the foreign countries. Just that those kids could come home. And praying for our families in the middle of their projects right now. I mean, share what you tell the warfare that families.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, when you start adopting, there's a lot of warfare because you're hitting widows and orphans.
Yeah.
And you're getting close. You're over the target. And when you're over the target, you're going to get some fire. And I just always tell people in the midst of this, you're going to have a lot of things happen, and you'll be praying, and you'll have things to remind you of, here's why we're doing it, here's why we're doing it. I always say there's one more thing to remember. Remember, somebody's watching you. Somebody's watching. And I know because I was watching. I was watching when our pastor at Fellowship in 2001 adopted. I was watching. And when we adopted Gracie in 2003 from China, I had a couple years later, I had some guys come up to me and say, yeah, we said if JT and Sarah can do it, we can do it. Mm-hmm. And that's what people think. It's like there's this holy chain, and every adoption is attached to another one. So someone's watching, and it's an inspiration, and it's cool. I pray for our families, and I pray for the families and the people that work at both hands, because we're here, and it's for us to be protected. I got a letter when I first started about 2 years into both hands from a friend of mine, and he kind of quoted from somebody else, but he said, JT, if I was Satan, let me tell you what I'd do. And he started listing all these things. I'd try and get you squabbling amongst you. I'd try and bring shame to you. I'd probably bring, if I couldn't get that, I'd try and kill you. I thought, and it's, for me, the picture of this fires me up. I just picture this battle. I picture Satan getting up in the morning with his little minions, and he's going through the list. When he gets to my name, I don't want him checking the box that says not a threat. I want him thinking, crap, he's up again. And just while I'm here, just got to make a difference.
Wow.
Seek impact, not ease. That's what it's more fulfilling.
Amen. Amen.
Thanks for that message. That's really great. It echoes to what you said earlier, that you're often most safe when you're out on a limb. I really like that. And I think there's a deep truth to that in so many respects of life. So thank you all for sharing the story. There's one story left to tell, though, and it's a long-standing tradition that we have with Signature Required, is that you all have to bring in something that reveals a little bit of your personality. So, JT, I normally would start with you as the elder statesman. However, I'm starting with Jared because, for those listening, Jared has about a 1-inch high pink wooden plunger that is on the shelf.
Would you like the honor of holding it?
Absolutely. How could one
Wow.
decline that?
Yes, there you go. Hold my plunger. So when JT reached, back before any of us, and it was just him, when they reached the first $1 million milestone, he decided, what did you climb? Your roof.
Climbed a roof. I shouted it from the rooftops.
Shouted from the rooftops.
My little daughter Gracie, who we adopted, she was 2002. She was 2011. She was probably 10 years old. She filmed me on my phone and me climbing up on the roof and yelling, "Praise God, from whom all blessings." Because every million we do something.
Yeah.
We do something. Sometimes it's crazy. Sometimes it's it's fun.
Yeah. So every million since then, it's progressed and it's gotten more and more crazy. And so for we were going to an adoption conference in St. Louis I guess that was last summer, right?
Yeah.
And we were trying to think, okay, what could be the narrative? What could be the funny story? What's JT going to climb? And so we decided, okay, he's going to climb the arch. And so you can look up the video. It's on our YouTube. And we have him going into Mission Impossible style. He goes into Lowe's, picks up some plungers, duct tape, and then we get him trying to climb the arch with plungers.
I'm thinking Tom Cruise, right? You know, climbing the building.
As one would.
To me, it would make
As
sense.
one would.
Why would that not be a good idea?
Wait, did you play the theme song? Did you
Yep.
have like
yeah.
AirPods?
Oh,
yeah.
Jared does these great. It's a great video.
All right.
So a couple weeks later in the mail, I get this from one of our the caseworkers at an adoption agency that we partner with, and she loves us and follows us. And so she sent this to me and a little note just saying how much she loved the video. And so I've had it on my desk ever since, just because it's.
Is this video publicly available?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna link to this video in the comments
In the notes,
here.
yeah.
We're gonna put that in the podcast
And show it
notes.
to our children.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
They're all good to show to children. I mean, they're funny, and we've jumped out an airplane, and we've had a lot of fun with this Every $1 Million.
Yeah, he went skydiving. It was a big one.
Oh. All right, JT, bring us home. What did you write?
I have a tendency to kind of doodle a little bit, and I guess this.
Hold it up for the camera here so they can see it.
This would be my T-shirt. This is an example of my doodles.
Wow.
And this is an example. Yeah, you got the right thing. There's that face there, and it really does take a long time to do it, because it's like usually I would do it when I was in a personal one-on-one with an employee, and I'd have a chart there, but I'd be listening to them, and I just, it wasn't just me, but I'd kind of doodle a little bit while I'm listening to them, and I listen, and it helps me when I doodle, and I don't think maybe it's irreverent. I don't mean to be, but and then one time. I've always thought, well, let's get this printed. My kids always say, Dad, you got any doodles? You got anything left? Because they like. So one year I took one of the doodles. I've got about 4 or 5 sheets like that, and I made a T-shirt.
It's so cool.
And my kids, they wish it was on a white T-shirt. They don't like the yellow for some reason. Now I'm thinking, jeez.
Come on, kids.
So
That's awesome.
that's just mine, and I.
Reveals a little of your personality.
Well,
That
yeah,
is an
don't look at the
interesting-
doodles too closely. Yeah, well, I don't even know that.
That's interesting that helps you focus. How poorly I draw, that would just distract everybody in the room. And they'd be like, if you're drawing that poorly, whatever your opinion is just not as valuable based upon the work product you have in front of me there. So that actually, for those that are just listening, it's a fantastic set of doodles there.
It's really impressive.
Yes.
I couldn't do that.
Well, as a wrap, both of you, thank you for serving this community, serving our nation, serving the kingdom.
Yeah.
It is no surprise to me that when you start with a heart mission of serving widows and orphans, that you come all these years later and find tremendous blessing.
Yeah.
You find that the Lord has met you financially and then some, that you continue to have opportunities to grow and stretch the organization, that let you keep trusting and sowing into a story that you can literally, JT, trace the Lord's hand from 12 years old, and seeing the skills that you've been blessed with, how your heart has been burdened for this cause uniquely, and for you to be able to be providing that testimony here many, many years later. It's really a true privilege for us to have you here. Thank you, JT.
It's an honor.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
You all are doing amazing, amazing work.
Thank you.